And so what I'll be talking about next is that we've seen really two models come out with deploying your API infrastructure. One of this is a centralized approach, and then another is more decentralized or siloed approach. Sometimes we see a mix of customers trying to do two, but these are both the really traditional models that most companies are doing, and there's pros and cons to both. I'll be reviewing each of these models and walk you through why you might want to choose one of these models or not. Lastly, I'll end up with a federated model, which is the Kong recommended model. Moving first to the siloed or decentralized model, this is really where each line of business is going and having complete control over their development stack. It's really a true DevOps shop. We see this often with conglomerates with 10 or more business units. In this scenario, we see delivery teams own everything, soups to nuts. So, for example, a centralized team at most creates a blueprint or infrastructure of code that the business unit consumes. But other than that, they are doing everything on their own, developing rate limiting. And what this comes is some really big risks to the business. So let's say you're doing a SOC 2 review. It's going to be really hard to get to know what each service is doing. And it could spend months, if not more than months, going and collecting every single thing that you need for that SOC to review there, because there's no standardization. This also becomes a big security risk too, if you don't have, for example, a rate limiting or API keys automatically added to services. Another big negative is that sometimes if you switch teams, a developer does, it's like joining another company because they do things completely differently. And so it's a whole new onboarding process. There isn't that ability to adjust talent and resourcing depending on the needs of the business. So it's very hard to become an agile, innovative organization. Lastly, is reuse goes down because not everyone's documenting the same things, if they document at all. And it can be really frustrating as someone that's trying to build, learning what all the different services are internally that you can build upon if you even do find them. And a lot of times you just end up writing your own stuff to work around not finding those other services. Next, moving on to a more centralized. This is really a top-down approach. This is what a lot of legacy API management vendors deal with. And this is where the centralized IT team owns everything. They own infrastructure, configurations, policy, governance, and each line of business delegates these things to that centralized org. Sometimes they're known as centers of excellence. Often there's a single control plane that exists for all teams, and the data planes are provisioned by the centralized team, and they're responsible for the operation, maintenance, and evolution of these data planes. This is great for standardization, those SOC 2, a lot of those negatives in the other model, but it can be really painful for development teams. So imagine that you want to change the rate limiting for your application. You can't just do it yourself. Often you're going and writing a ticket and then waiting for the centralized team to make those changes for you. If you need maybe a new API provisioned, or you want something unique, but you're not the most important line of business at the company, you might not even get what you need, even if you wait a long time. So the biggest downside for if you zoom out from a business perspective with this approach is in terms of speed to market delivery and innovation. They definitely go down with this centralized approach, but then you can do SOC 2 on audits, it's more secure, you have higher quality. Next slide. So you can see in both of these units, there's pros and cons. You either have more of a developer-focused model and you have a faster time to market overall, but developers still have to do the right limiting, et cetera. So they are spending extra time doing IT work that they might not have to do otherwise. And then the other is that it's more corporate standardization, security focus, looking at the overall organization, but being a lot slower. And at the end of the day, the key is to find this right balance and trying to do more with less, which is especially important in this macro environment. And we really feel like that there is a better way to achieve this balance. I'm next going to go into the attributes of that balance, and then I'm going to go through what a federated model looks like.